Hey, Sarah. How are
Hi,
you?
Richard. I'm good. How are you?
Good. Were you
I'm not,
watching any of the Olympics and all the big stuff that was happening at the Olympics?
no,
That makes two of us. Welcome to Entertainment is Broken.
let's get into it.
All right, so today we're going to talk about a number of different things, but mostly about like movie and television tourism. And it's something that's a big deal. I have done some of it, a little bit of it. When I'm away somewhere, I'll have a look beforehand. When we go to New York, we often go to the Ghostbusters fire station. It's always super cool. But I will tell you,
The library.
the library, yep. But I'll tell you, I've been on 10,000 movie sets for various aspects of my job over the years. Never as once as an actor, bad acting, very bad acting from me.
Need
But
to see
uh,
this.
yeah, I played a zombie priest in a zombie movie. It was mostly in a big hole. They dug a hole and stuck me in the hole with a big sharp stick. And the idea was that I was waiting until humans were trying to escape the zombie hordes. They'd fall in the hole, get stuck in the stick, and I would eat them. That was my role. And even then, I wasn't particularly good at it. But I've been on a lot of film sets doing interviews and that kind of thing. And film sets aren't a whole lot of fun. And I just think it's interesting that we build up this kind of mythology about film sets and locations and that sort of thing when we are on vacation as a movie tourist.
Listen, guilty as charged. It's a weird thing I have, and I have been to probably over 100 filming locations. I was just thinking if I just start in Toronto, okay, so
Mhm.
there's even if I just do the David Cronenbergs, I do this
Right.
so often that these locations alone I probably hit monthly. Okay. I'm talking the dog park from the Shrouds, the
Yep.
Black Christmas house, the Crimes of the Future building, which
Mhm.
is incredible, part of the U of T campus. It's probably one of my favorites because it's like this weird complex that's kind of like mid-century modern, a little gothic, and it just has this weird vibe, and it still is like that to this day. The School from the Brood is still like that today.
I
The
love that movie.
Courtright Center is still, that's a trip like an hour outside of the city, but it's still
Yeah.
exactly like it's like Cronenberg knew the timelessness of these locales. Okay, so then you have The Fly, the mural. I was just at the AGO. That first scene of The Fly, right in the middle of the AGO. I mean, this alone pains me.
I think that there's something about it. We're talking right now, we both live in Toronto. So we're talking about stuff that, in some cases, just a few steps away from where we live, if you live downtown.
Easier, yes.
But when you're doing it on vacation, and we'll talk about the Heated Rivalry Cottage in just a second, which I can't believe that it's only $248 a night. That has to be wrong, but that's what our information tells us, because I would have thought it would have been 10 times that amount. But I think that there's a bunch of different reasons that we do this. I think if you are a fan of David Cronenberg, of a particular movie, going to where it was shot is a bit of nostalgia. It connects you on a little deeper level, I think, with the movie and the story, and it gives you a chance to relive one of those things that you love. And if you are like me, when I was first starting to go see movies, they were pure escapism for me. I loved going to the movies because I could see things that in my small town in Nova Scotia I was never going to get a chance to see. And so it was escapism from everyday life. And I think by going to visit the, whatever it might be, the fire station, the Ghostbusters fire station, it brings back a little bit of that escapism, which I think is a huge part of why so many of us go to the movies.
It does. And it's like when you sit in front of a movie, you're brought into the magic. And
Mhm.
then so when you get to stand in the place that it films, for me, it feels like bringing a little bit of that magic into the real world. And if life doesn't feel like a movie, Richard, I don't want it. A little extra. So it's like one thing, okay, I'm here. The AGO is like this beautiful museum, and I can see like the columns are still the same. It's like I'm in the same room. But I
Mhm.
love this idea of people like actually playing into the tourism action and not just heated rivalry, like not just you can drive by the cabin or you can like get a coffee at the coffee shop, but you can actually rent this cabin
Yeah.
and actually do it right and really integrate. And like, I love that. Speaking of New York, I've been seeing, what is it, the Four Seasons that Kevin McAllister stays at in Home Alone 2. He
Oh, the
has
Plaza,
the,
the
the
Plaza.
Plaza, yes. And so I think if you stay at the Plaza, you can order like a $500 ice cream sundae
Right.
a la Kevin McAllister. And these are the experiences that I think are really smart and like are cash cows. Like, take my money.
Yeah. So in New York, I have gone to a number of different places, but one of the ones that I thought was pretty cool, and again, it's not really based on the movie itself. It's based on a clip that I saw, and it's Cary Grant, and he's in Grand Central Station. And in Grand Central Station, near the Oyster Bar, there is something called the Whisper Wall. And if you stand in one corner of this little atrium that is out front of the restaurant, you stand in one corner, you're other person, you need two people for this to be really effective. So my wife would stand on the other side, and you can whisper something into the wall, and somehow it's engineered so that the sound travels all the way through and comes out the other end without making a sound anywhere else. And I first saw it in a Cary Grant movie where he was trying to woo a woman, and he uses it. And we've gone to see it, and it works. It's beautiful.
Like that's magic. That's everything. And it's actually interesting that we're talking about this today. I got very excited when I found out this was going to be our topic, because yesterday was Twin Peaks Day. And it's Twin Peaks Day because in the pilot of the first episode of Twin Peaks, of the first season of Twin Peaks, Kyle MacLachlan as Agent Dale Cooper is driving into Twin Peaks, and he says, "Diane, it's February 24th. It's 11 a.m. and I am driving into Twin Peaks." And Kyle MacLachlan has at different years done that. Like, he'll get in his Subaru or whatever it is,
Right.
and he'll drive in that spot. And people travel from all over the world.
You've done it, right?
I've done it twice because this is what kind of a dork I am. And at the time, I was doing the van life thing. So I was living in a van. It made it quite easy. We drove into the van. We parked in a parking lot. We slept there for a couple nights. We went to...
So I'm just going to jump in just for a second here. Tell the story in a second. But I didn't know that you had done the van life thing. I wrote a fairly comprehensive story about van life a number of years ago for the Toronto Star. And one of the things that people told me was that you do have this kind of feeling like you're on the road and anything could happen, and
Kerouac.
it's freedom. It's Jack Kerouac. It's Peter Fonda in Easy Rider. It's all that stuff. Except at night when you have to sleep. And they said it's noisy, can be scary depending on where you are. And it just feels, it's not like you're able to slam the door and lock the big heavy wooden door that you have on your house. You feel exposed. Did you feel exposed?
It's really interesting because we were grieving the loss of one of our dogs, and our other dog, who was older than our younger dog. We obviously knew we were going to have to do this again very soon.
Right.
And so the impetus for us getting on the road was because we wanted to spend as much time with our dog as possible. And we wanted to like spoil her and show her everything. We didn't want to have to do a winter in Canada with her again. So we got a van, we packed her up into the van, and we drove south until it got warm. And so Nevada was like our first thing. And yeah, okay, there are elements where you're like in a Walmart parking lot, you can hear things, you put covers up on the windows and you just hope for the best, okay?
You can hear people pooping into buckets around you.
And you can hear everything, okay? But we were across the river from like the biggest mansions in Austin, Texas. And we were like in a campsite. And so in lots of ways, you can experience things like the most luxurious things you could never experience without that. Like, for example, being able to stay in Twin Peaks, the actual hotel that is the Northwestern, which plays such a central role in Twin Peaks show, is actually called Snoqualmie Lodge, and it is absolutely gorgeous. It's owned by the First Nation now, which I really love, and there's been a lot of reconciliation work and things like that. And so, as it should be, very, very pricey. Like, and especially for like a weekend where the Twin Peaks Day,
right,
everyone in the world wants to be there. So there's just no way I could ever afford that, ever wake up in Twin Peaks. But when you live in the back of a van, You definitely can. And so we did get to experience it twice. And the town does. It isn't just like, okay, here's where it's filmed. You can eat at the R&R diner. You can go to the Roadhouse Saloon. You can go to Smokey Joe's and have a beer where Sarah
Wow.
Palmer ate that guy's face off. Spoiler alert.
Wow. And all these places look pretty much as they do on the TV show?
They look exactly the same. Like we drank a Rainier from the same bar fridge that you can see in the shot.
Do they have
Like,
damn fine coffee? How is the cherry pie?
it was excellent. The coffee was damn fine. And I have to just come out and say it. There is a magic vibe. Like there is something that transcends and you can feel like the energies, right? And also just like when you're in one of these places and you see other people there, it's like, hey,
I also
dorks
think,
in this together.
yeah, I also think that a television show like that affords you time to really start to absorb the locations and the characters and that sort of thing. That's why movie characters tend to stick with me. I can still quote a lot of the television, the long form television that I watched, because if in the old days, it used to be 24 episodes of a show. And if
Right.
you were watching 24 episodes of a show, you knew where, that John Ritter on Three's Company went to the Regal Beagle, and you knew all that stuff. Whereas in a movie, it can be a little bit more fleeting, I think.
Right. And the movie magic too. They can take a place and make it look completely different. But when
Well,
you're going back to sets over and over like 24 times in a series, you don't want to have to do that 24 times. So you're gonna leave it kind of as is.
yeah, I used to live downtown in Toronto on a street called Dalhousie Street, which is not a busy street, but it's right downtown. And depending on what angle you shoot from, you can still see all the tall buildings and the whole thing. But it was used constantly as a film set. So I don't know how many mornings I would go downstairs and all of a sudden there's USA Today newspaper boxes everywhere, American mailboxes, yellow cabs lining both sides of the street. And then you'd see like Bruce Willis getting out of a trailer to go shoot something. And every day, at least once or twice a month, you would see that. And the transformation was remarkable. And I also recall you talk about how they changed things. Years ago, I was walking through High Park here in Toronto, which if you don't live here, it's a giant park in the west end of the city, and it's beautiful. They have capybaras and there's cherry blossoms that bloom and stuff. It's a lovely place to go have a walk. And one June or July, I'm cruising along through there, and I turn around the corner, and there's snow everywhere, and there's snowmen, and there's a little gingerbread house. And I walked onto the set of an Anne Murray Christmas special that was being shot 4 or 5 months in advance.
Oh my God. To me, that is like the coolest job in the world. If I had a dream job, it would be like location scout. Pasadena is a massive hot zone for filming locations.
Right.
And Halloween is filmed there. And you can now, if you didn't know that, and now you go and watch the original John Carpenter Halloween, Deborah Hill, John Carpenter, pardon me, and you will see palm trees like literally everywhere. And they're just, this is Haddonfield, Illinois, apparently.
Right. Yeah.
But but because of that, to me, like a sunny Halloween day means more. You know what I mean? And
Right.
so it's actually really interesting that like the zeitgeist and pop culture can actually change your perception of like reality, like skew reality a little bit, because like I associate Halloween with like a California Halloween now, and that's not Carpenter's fault. But anytime I see leaves here, I always think I should, like good leaves that look crispy and orange, I always think I should get bags and I should send these to LA.
Right.
They need these in Pasadena because at one point, you know that they did that. It literally is the coolest thing to me. I actually, now that I think back to like my whole life in this, I actually went to school in New Orleans at the University of New Orleans for my last semester of undergrad because of a television show, because I needed to be in the place. So this was 2013. Could you guess what television show? brought
in
me
New
to New
Orleans.
Orleans to study.
Was it CSI New Orleans or one of
It was
those? No?
not CSI New Orleans. It's better than that.
Oh,
The David Simon Show
I don't
called
know. I'm drawing a
Treme.
blank. Oh, Treme, that Anthony Bourdain used to be a writer on.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
I know you have a New Orleans connection yourself.
I
So
do.
I watched that show. I fell in love with it so quickly and so intensely. It's so good. David Simon is the creator of The Wire, which is like,
Yeah.
many people call the best television show of all time. It is an incredible show. And Baltimore is such a character in that show.
Hmm.
And so what David Simon did is he said, I want to do a show like this about New Orleans and post Katrina New Orleans and kind of examine so there's so many characters and each character kind of represents a different facet of the culture. And I saw that show and I was like, oh my God, I need to go to New Orleans. So I did my last semester abroad. I went to New Orleans. And so I don't know what actually, when movies are done right, it connects to you in this way that you just need more. You know what I mean? And I think it's so cool that one of those ways is you can actually just pick up and go to that place.
It's interesting to me what you say about that. You went there specifically for that. I don't know how many times I've been to New York simply because I used to do a lot of work down there. And then my wife and I like to go down. It's been many times, but I've never felt more like a New Yorker than when I walked around the corner and they were shooting an episode of Law and Order. And I was in my head, I could bong, bong, I could hear it all. It's a small, really agile crew. They shoot those things really fast. Jerry Orbach, the dearly departed, wasn't there, which was a shame, but I got to see a scene of Law and Order being shot. And to me, that meant a great deal. I've spent way too much time watching that television show. And the idea that I could see it was just like a little check mark that brought, for me, a bit of nostalgia for having watched the show for so long and then being able to see how it was done and how remarkably fast it was shot, how nimble they are. I loved all that. And now when I watch the show, and my wife and I, because we've been there so much, go, oh, look at that. We know that we've been to that diner, don't we? And there's an immersive thing that happens. But why exactly was it so important to you to go to Twin Peaks or to the locations of Twin Peaks and immerse yourself in it that way?
So there's this book called The Moviegoer, Walker Percy. And I actually read it in New Orleans in my English class when I did my undergrad there. And very meta vibes because it's set in New Orleans and I'm reading it in New Orleans. And the idea is that this main character goes to the movies out of this existential kind of quest, this life quest, and this struggle of why am I here and what am I doing is only quelled when he is sitting in a dark movie taking in that narrative, and it's even better for him if he's doing it repeatedly, if he can go to the same theater and see the same movie in the same way and get the same feeling. It's a relief to him. It provides some consistency in this crazy world. And I feel like that is a little bit what it is for me. And also growing up outside of it, I dreamed of the big city. I grew up in Brampton. And so I think it also kind of it's like a check-in with the real world, it makes me feel like I'm part of it. I'm part of something bigger in this community. And then, so then when you get to actually stand in it, it brings that feeling to life a little bit. There's nothing I like more.
Although I have to say that movies that are shot here in Toronto, and this is stupid because I know how movies are made, and I know that geography doesn't mean squat when it comes to movies, but it makes me crazy if I see someone walking down Bloor Street in a movie, which quite often you will, and then they turn around a corner and they're on Roncesvalles, which is a 25-minute subway and streetcar ride away. And it irks me, and it's irrational. I can only imagine with the amount of movies that are shot in New York or Chicago or any place like that, people there must be pulling their hair out all the time, or maybe they're smart enough not to care. But that kind of irks me a little bit.
Does that count as what is it when
like a
Like a
continuity
continuity
error.
error? Yeah.
No, it is always in, I would think anyway, in service of the storytelling, which is the most important thing. And if you're one of the, I don't know, I imagine it's a fairly small community of people that will go, oh no, Bloor Street and Roncesvalles do not meet. We actually they do, but you couldn't get there from there. So I'm just saying, that I find it irksome, but it's not something that's going to put me off a movie completely. But it's something that takes me out of it for a moment until I give my head a shake and say, you're supposed to be paying attention to the story, not the geography.
It also is, it does make the film better when you go back and watch it because there's so much stuff that filmmakers are doing that you can't really take in until you're there. And then the lighting comes to play, the set decoration, and all these things. It just becomes clearer just how much of like a massive undertaking this is. I remember when I lived in Hamilton, they were filming The Umbrella Academy. And they took Ottawa Street there, which is like this old textile area. And that still has a lot of the old school fronts of the businesses there.
Right.
And they made it into 1960s Dallas. And it looked so perfect. I remember talking to some of the businesses and they were like, yeah, I want to keep it up. Like I'm considering becoming a butcher now because
that sign is just so cool.
It's so good. And then I would go down and they would be, and once like the sets were one thing, but then they'd bring the actors in and you'd have 50 or 60 people walking in complete costume with the glasses and the shoes. And then they'd bring the cars in. And now it's just, okay, wow. This is
no,
a whole
it is a
different
wowzer,
place.
especially if you're not exactly expecting it. They were shooting the movie Cinderella Man in Toronto. Ron Howard directed it, Paul Giamatti, Russell Crowe in the film, set in the 1930s, maybe early 40s. And the back end of what used to be the Hudson Bay building, and now it's just a big empty building at the corner of Queen and Yonge, which extends down for another city block, they turned the back end of that building into Madison Square Garden. And I was quite innocently just walking around downtown one day, and I went around a corner, and it was as if I had been thrust back in time 100 years. And the set decoration was beautiful. There was amazing cars and the costumes and everything. And then there's Ron Howard sitting on one of those cameras that's on a dolly, so it goes up in the air, and it was like, it's Opie's here even. This is perfect. This is a perfect thing. But we last year, watched a movie called Blue Moon. And I love that movie. I love this movie. It is the story of Lorenz Hart, who was, in the first part of the 20th century, one of the most successful Broadway composers, along with Richard Rodgers. And they wrote My Funny Valentine and the song Blue Moon and many other things. Lorenz Hart was an alcoholic. He was apparently mercurial, difficult to work with. And
hilarious, adorable.
Yeah, but that relationship split, and Richard Rodgers went on to join up with Oscar Hammerstein. They wrote Oklahoma and The Sound of Music. They became the team for much of the second half of the 20th century on Broadway. Anyway, but it takes place in one night at the bar Sardi's in
which I have to
New
go
York.
to now. Like it's on my list.
And that's where we got married. So the bar that the movie happens in is where we got married.
Okay, you are the coolest person ever.
And so the funny thing about it was that when we were getting married there, we made the arrangements 6 or 8 months in advance, however long it was. And we showed up and I'm talking to one of the guys who's been there around forever. And I said, people must get married here all the time. It's so beautiful here. It's so cool. And the guy said, no, actually, I think the last person to get married here was Olivia de Havilland, like one of the stars of Gone with the Wind. Was married there years before.
You do have an old school.
I have an old
Vibe,
heart.
yes.
Yeah, but the bar, just so you know, the bar in the movie does not really exactly resemble the bar at Sardi's, but it is cool that they rebuilt it in Ireland and shot the movie over there. But it is just cool that you see him go in at the very beginning. And I think they must have shot that in New York because there's this great brass sign there that you walk past when you go in. And that was very much in evidence.
I I cannot believe you hadn't told me that you got married at Sardi's before. That is the coolest thing.
And so after we were married and that, we came back to Toronto and we threw a huge party here. Some people came to the wedding down there, but we threw a huge party here. And the wedding cake, which was made by a great friend of ours named Susan, ended up being, we just said, hey, like she said, I would love to make the wedding cake. I said, of course, you're brilliant. Do whatever you want. And so the wedding cake was built to resemble Sardi's. And Sardi's is known for a number of things. The caricatures that are all over the walls that are everywhere. So she had a bunch of those. She had Andrea and I sitting on top of the cake in our, what looked very much like her wedding dress and my wedding tuxedo, which, by the way, was called a Manhattan tuxedo because it was gold paisley, reading a Sardi's menu. And if you looked at the back side of the Sardi's menu, there were menu items on it.
Okay.
That's
crazy. A friend.
Yeah.
That's a friend.
Yeah.
Where
Pretty
would
crazy
I
stuff.
want to get married? That's just so iconic. Like I said, Pasadena, LA is incredible for just that kind of vibe where you're like, oh, that's Chateau Marmont there, or Frankenmusso's. Frankenmusso's was the vibe.
Is where I discovered the Bloody Mary. I was a Bloody, because I'm Canadian, I was a Bloody Caesar guy before then, but they don't have them down there. And I used to go to, when I worked in Los Angeles, I used to go to Musso and Frank's quite often. And they had a bartender working behind the bar named Manny, who was incredible. This is at least 20 years ago, maybe even a hair longer than that. And he had been there for so long that he had served James Dean coffee. That's how long he had worked there. And yep, and he made incredible cocktails. And so there's like the dining room, you go around the side and there is this great bar that you can sit at. And there's like Clark Gable's hat rack is there, and the phone booth that Charlie Chaplin had installed so that he could make phone calls from there is still there, all that stuff. And Manny used to make Bloody Marys, and he had a little electric spoon, and he would talk to you and tell you stories about, James Dean used to, while he stirred your drink with a little electric spoon.
Like, what is better than that?
It endeared me to him so much. And now you see the Musso and Frank in so many things. I was in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the Kaminsky Method. You see it in all sorts of things. But it is one of those places that is just so, its moment, which was the 1920s in Los Angeles, Hollywood, like it doesn't feel like it has changed all that much. And it's really fantastic. And when you walk down the street from there, the next sort of place that I would always go was called the Frolic Room, because they had the most incredible neon sign hanging out front. And if you watch LA Confidential, Kevin Spacey is seen outside of this incredible neon sign. Built during Prohibition, it didn't have a front door. It was attached to the theater, the Pantages Theater, which is next door. So the actors could go over for a drink, but nobody else was allowed in. Howard Hughes owned it. It's where, in the movie Barfly, Mickey Rourke says, "For my friends," when he buys a round of drinks for everyone. And that's where Charles Bukowski used to drink. So that was always a stop for me. The Frolic Room, absolutely incredible place.
Come on. Should we get a drink at Boston Pizza or the Frolic Room? You know what I'm saying? And yeah, Musso and Frank's too. It's so crazy because you walk, you're just like on Hollywood Boulevard, right? Yeah. You're just like dodging.
Which isn't great, yeah.
Pea puddles and smells. And you're like, okay, which like, that's my vibe. That is my vibe. Okay, so I'm not like talking down about that. But it is incredible that then you walk up to Musso and Frank's and then you like open the door and then now you're in. Yeah. And it's mahogany and it's the bar that's been there forever and you can't take pictures and you turn off your cell phone and everybody's in, your servers are in like tuxedo tie with the waist thing and it's just like exactly frozen in time. It's incredible. And we do have things like that. Yeah. Sorry, Mike.
I love all that stuff. And I searched that out a little bit just simply because it's all going so quickly in Toronto here where we live. All that stuff is disappearing, and Los Angeles is not great for hanging on to their heritage either. If I'm ever down there working, I always make a point of going to Musso and Frank's because I'm knocking wood here. If that place ever closed, it would be wrong. It would just feel
Yes,
wrong.
it would be wrong. But also, knock on wood, because yeah, you never know. But you hope that that's what's so great about these old cities too, and so much history is like you can knock off 10 filming locations when you go to
Yeah.
the observatory, for example. That's where Kelly and Dylan are making out when they cheat on Brenda.
Rebel
That's where
without a
James
cause. Come
Rebel
on.
without a cause. So it's like you could just go to one place and see it from all those different angles too, and all those stories are still there. It's incredible. I do recommend going to the Walsh Casa if you are ever in the LA area. It's in Altadena, which is by Pasadena, because in terms of a house, just the 90210 house is so visually recognizable, right? Like you can
Yeah.
just instantly pull it to mind. And when you are there, out of the hundreds of filming location sets that I've been at, it is one of these ones that just is. It looks exactly the same. And then it's right beside Dylan's house. So you can walk to
Yeah.
Dylan's house for Brenda's house. I'm telling you, it's everything. It's everything.
So one of the things that I wanted, now this was not a movie tour, but every time I'm in London, I go and do a little David Bowie walking tour. And David Bowie is someone I admire greatly. And years ago when I was there working, I made a list of places where he had worked, where he'd recorded things, blah, 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 blah. At the end of the journey, which in this particular story that I'm telling you about, I took my wife on. She had never done it with me. And we went walking around. We end up at a place on Wardour Street called The Ship in Soho. And Wardour was where there was a great amount of action in the 1960s. The Marquee Club was there. Jimi Hendrix used to drink at The Ship. Keith Moon got kicked out of there for letting off a cherry bomb at the bar. The Beatles used to drink there. This was a place that has some legendary status to it. And that connects to David Bowie because you can either walk in through Wardour Street or there's Queen Anne's Lane, I think it's called, or Queen Anne's Alley maybe, off to the side. And there's a door you can come in that way. If you go in or out that way, you walk past Trident Studios, where David Bowie recorded Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, Hunky Dory. Queen did part of Bohemian Rhapsody there, blah, blah, blah. And it's still there. It's used for voiceovers and things now, but legendary. Elton John recorded there, all that kind of stuff. So I take my wife around and I show her all this stuff. And then we're sitting at the Ship having a drink. And this is one of those things where there's a confluence of events that just makes it perfect. We went and we sat at the bar and we're having a beer, and there is an American guy that comes and sits next to us. And I start talking to him, and he looks familiar, but I can't quite place him. And he's done the same thing. Oh, yeah, David Bowie. Do you know about the Trident Studio? We talked. And as it turns out, it's Taylor Hawkins from the Foo Fighters. He had played the night before at in front of 20 or 30,000 people, and he was doing his David Bowie walk to kill an afternoon. We ended up sitting and chatting all afternoon, and I told him that I play drums a little bit, and I could never figure out how to play the opening of a song called 5 Years for a song on Ziggy Stardust, recorded steps away. And he said, oh, here's how you do it. And he showed me using the bar as a set of drums, how to do it. Yeah. And so for me, this was like you going to Twin Peaks and Kyle MacLachlan was sitting there having a cup of coffee and some cherry pie. Like this to me was that perfect moment where just the world of the past and the imaginary and all that stuff banged right into reality. And I'm sitting talking about rock stars with the real life rock star. Taylor Hawkins is gone now, of course. He was such a sweet guy and was so lovely to me and my wife, and he gave me a drumming lesson at the Ship.
Literal magic. Like that is so cool, and that I will never hear that opening of 5 years ever the same again. It's so intricate, and is it with a brush? Is that sound?
No, maybe one brush, but he was just using his hands and showing me. But man, I still can't play it. But so that's an example of going somewhere, meeting someone that sort of brings the experience alive. Now, when you were doing your van life, you didn't stay in the Twin Peaks Hotel, but you can stay in all these, like film tourism, apparently is a $73 billion industry. And that kind of blows my mind a little bit. I would have figured it's big. There's a lot of film fans out there. But if you go, people travel like to Albuquerque, where Breaking Bad was shot, for instance. And
Right.
apparently people go there to see the sets and to see like where the show was shot. But then they go to the house where Walter White lived and they throw damn pizzas on the roof because he did it in one episode of the show. And apparently the people that live there don't love it.
Yeah, I could see them not loving that. It's really
Yeah.
interesting. In Pasadena, you have the Halloween house, and you also have the or Nightmare on Elm Street house.
Right,
Okay.
right.
And the Halloween people have totally embraced it. They have a pumpkin outside of their house you can actually take a photo with. And then the Nightmare on Elm Street guy hates it. Do not come here. You know what I mean? But if they were smart, and I think people have garnered in on this, then they're like, if that was my house, I would move, and now I'm charging $1,000 a night to stay there because the amount that people would spend is now, because now already hotels accommodations are not cheap, and now there's that extra cachet. Like we're saying, we have the Heated Rivalry Cottage here it's in Ontario.
In Muskoka, yeah. And so it's called the Barlow Chan Cottage listing. It's in Muskoka. If you're not from Ontario, Muskoka is, Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell have a house up there, and they have summered there for years. And it's just lovely. It's a lovely lake and beautiful area. And
unless you're sent to sports camp there when you're young and you don't want to go to sports camp, and then it's just like a nightmare. But that's a side thing.
It sounds like we're getting personal here. So this cottage was used in the Heated Rivalry. And so this thing now, they're saying you can rent it for $248 and for some reason 10 cents a night. I don't understand where the 10 cents came from, and that it's only $240 a night. It will be an Airbnb. I would have thought literally with the heat coming off that show and the amount of fans that are out there and that sort of thing, that it would be 10 times that amount of money per night.
It's got to be a marketing thing just off the bat, just to get everybody talking about it, and then it probably will be 10 times. I think the 248.10, Shane's number is 24, Ilya's number is 81, so I think they're doing something there. So
there you go.
I watch this, get in now. It seems like it's like a lottery at this point. Because then you see other examples like the Swan House for Twilight fans, that's $450 a night. Like these areas, they're pretty expensive anyway. So to get that little extra thing, I think is very cool.
Yeah,
I would do it if I had the money.
Yeah, the Hookley Hotel, which was featured in Schitt's Creek in Mono, Ontario, the Rosebud Motel, and the building apparently, according to our notes here, often for sale. So I don't know exactly what that means, but it's periodically open for fan booking.
I would stay in the Schitt's Creek Motel. And that's the thing. I think that's the key. If you can make it like actually reasonable as well, take your moments because they could be gone.
Yeah, they could be. There's lots of them to see. We just run down a few of them quickly. There's the Goonies Gold Mine in Astoria in Oregon. And Astoria was a pretty gritty place until they shot the Goonies there. It was facing a depression in the 80s. And then 40 years later, now, the Goonies effect is a massive tourism pillar. There's the Astoria Coffee Company, essentially functions as a Goonies headquarters, selling prop replicas and souvenirs. There's all sorts of other sort of ancillary things there, and people make a living from it. Let me just have a look here. The Broadchurch Bump in West Bay in Dorset. So after the first series of Broadchurch ended, tourism sites for the area saw record-breaking traffic up to 200 hits per minute during broadcasts. So people are on their phones and going, where is that? I want to go there. It's beautiful. I want to see it. So the Bull Hotel, where the cast and crew lived, became a destination in its own right, and the local market stalls featured in the show were so popular with real tourists that they inspired the town to establish a permanent indoor food and craft market. 77% of local businesses reported an increase in customers directly attributed to the show. So this stuff works.
And it's so cool to see the levels in which like people can benefit. So because of Game of Thrones in Northern Ireland, so you have like approximately the show overall brought in $110 million and created 6,000 jobs. That's crazy. And you think of things like Ingrid, how Howers was a local taxidermist in Silversmith, and because she made stuff for the show, people saw her work and were just like, where can I also get things like this? And when people are doing costume parties or theme nights, they want, the stuff to look as good as it does on the show. So now this woman's business is through the roof, and that is so cool.
But there's all sorts of play. If you're just thinking of Ontario, so Cambridge, Ontario was where the Gilead Victorian home was from Handmaid's Tale.
In Hamilton as well, actually, some filming
And in
locations.
Pickering, Ontario, the Green Gables area is there for Anne with an E. I mean, there's all sorts of these little towns that have really benefited from film production and then the tourism that comes afterwards. So it's pretty cool. We started off by talking about Heated Rivalry. I'm amazed that it took this long for the Heated Rivalry people to put this place on Airbnb.
No kidding. Richard, I'm coming to the cottage.
Maybe you can go in the week and then tell us about it next week on Entertainment is Broken.
It sounds great. And until then, follow us along wherever you listen to your fine podcasts, and we'll see you next week.